Da 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 da! Deck Tech, the video where we talk about my commander, my deck, and the cards I enjoy drawing. It's Leah doing another Deck Tech, and today we're going to talk about not a commander deck, but my classic Red Burn deck. I've had this deck since 2009. It's gone through many changes and iterations of itself. But some of the cards that have been in it since 2009, like Chain Lightning and Lightning Bolt, are still there. So we're going to not just delve into a red burn deck, but delve into some of my history in the game of Magic. Alright, so today the red burn deck is built in the Pauper format, simply because it's a lot easier for me to maintain than the Legacy format. It used to be in the Legacy format, and I'll go over that deck list after this one. In the Pauper format, not very much different from the Legacy format. We could still play some Chain Lightnings, can play some Lava Spikes, got some Rift Bolts, and Lightning Bolt make up the majority of our red burn deck, as is most red burn decks. Got our Fire Blasts in here for finishing, and then a couple of the lesser played cards, Searing Blaze, Needle Drop. I made this version into a snow version recently. I've been pretty happy with it just because I felt like running Scred, so we've got a variety of whatever snow mountains I happen to have on hand, and then some Forgotten Caves just for a little bit of cycling added to burn deck. Curse of the Pierced Heart's actually been a pretty good performer in this deck, and then we've got two creature options, the Thermo Alchemist and the Firebrand Archer, both of which react to playing lightning bolts and chain lightnings and doing additional damage. Our sideboard is fairly standard for a Pauper deck. We've got some artifact destruction, some countering blue, a little bit of land destruction, and then a few additional options to either deal with flying or opponent's creatures. It's not a very complicated sideboard. It doesn't come into play a whole lot. Generally, you just rush to burn right to the face. Past iterations of this deck actually played a blue card. Galvanic Probe? That's not right. Grixis Probe. It did play Grixis Probe for a little while based on watching my friends borrow and play the deck. I found Grixis Probe had a unique performance in it where they were using it to plan out their next turns. Probably the correct use of Grixis Probe, but till that got banned, I actually quite liked that being in here. It's banned because it costs Phyrexian mana, and that's just too powerful, which I guess I could see. So now the deck has to purely function on guesswork. So that's it for a pretty straightforward Pauper, basic top tier meta red burn deck. So now we're going to cut and talk about some of the history of this deck and look at the older list of it. Alright, here we are looking at the older list of the deck. This deck was originally acquired in 2009 for a Legacy tournament that took place in Chicago. It was a Grand Prix. The promo card at that Grand Prix happened to be Chrome Mox, but the artist who was supposed to be there to sign the Chrome Mox was sick, so nobody got their Chrome Mox signed. It was kind of sad. I was excited for that, but I did get a lot of other cool cards signed. In 2009, I was not heavily invested into Magic yet. I played in the Mirrodin block and kind of dropped back out after that. And I did own most all of the Mirrodin block at that point, but not a lot of other cards. I had a handful of Ravnica fetch lands. I owned Ravnica shock lands. I owned maybe one fetch land. Didn't have any dual lands yet. Was not thoroughly invested. This legacy deck was borrowed from my cousin just so that I could ride down with them and play in the tournament. I didn't own any of these cards, but it was borrowed on the intention that I would slowly buy the cards off my cousin, and this was going to be my first legacy deck. As in most years of Magic, when you're starting a new player in a format, you tend to give them a burn deck. So here was mine. And we'll look at. So this was a list that I wrote down. This was how you registered your deck for a tournament back then, was you actually wrote it down on paper and you turned it into the judge, and they had a table. They would spend all day going through these deck lists and writing them up as the tournament was played, actually, and then whenever they did a deck check, they would pull these lists out and use them to check against it. This is a spare copy. The original copy was given to the judge on that day, so this is my spare copy that I wrote down. I wrote some notes to myself of what I was supposed to do with a burn deck, because I honestly thought I couldn't remember. Now, you couldn't have these notes with you at the tournament, so I had them in the hotel room. I would sit and study them at night like a nerd. Well, my friends and my cousin practiced their decks at the desk and had a good time overall. The original list has changed quite a lot because it's Legacy. It's not the expensiveness of Legacy that I found difficult to maintain. It's that it actually rotated faster than it appears recently. So a lot of the cards that are played in this list are not played in today's Legacy burn decks, and I didn't really want to keep reinvesting in Legacy burn, so I made it into a Pauper deck instead because it's been more stable over the years. So now that we've looked at the old list, we're going to take a look at some of my show cards in the deck and my reason I keep a lightning bolt binder. Alright, we're going to take a look at some of the cards that are most memorable to me about this deck. First, I'm actually going to highlight this playmat background here. I picked this playmat because this is the kind of stuff that you could find at a Grand Prix or a Magic Fest, and this one's actually signed by the artist. This is a Ken Meyer Jr. playmat. He was out of stock at the time, so he had to mail it to me, and I was very excited to get it though, and I had a good time meeting him. And this is part of my memories of Magic Fest and Grand Prix and why I enjoy my burn deck. And so we'll get into the cards. So first, most classic card in this deck, we have this old white border lightning bolt. It has probably been in the deck since 2009 in a variety of sleeves and still continues to perform as good as it did back then. Rift Bolt has been upgraded in the deck. I got a hold of a couple of these F&M Rift Bolts. They used to all just be the Time Spiral Rift Bolt, and that was the new one that was available back in the 2009. It was about when Time Spiral came out. This Fire Blast I acquired as an F&M card, and was quite excited to have it because it was one of the first cards that I could use to upgrade into the deck when I got it that I didn't have to pay for. So I'm glad it's still around today, and I'm still enjoying it. Chain Lightning. So this card is highlighted. Originally, my Chain Lightnings that I was able to acquire for the deck so that I could buy it, it was cheaper to buy the Italian Chain Lightning, so I fumbled over what it did quite frequently if I had to calculate anything beyond 3 damage or try to explain it to my opponent, because I didn't have English ones. It was $8 for an Italian one, or it was $10 for an English one, so I went the cheap route. And after a long time, the Fire and Lightning deck came out, and that had a Chain Lightning in it, so it was one of my first opportunities to upgrade the old Italian ones to an English one. Later, however, I did update the Italian ones into regular English copies, so here's one of the old regular English copies I have, and then this was then reprinted in Battle Bond, and that made up for the last Italian Chain Lightning coming out of this deck. Alright, the last thing I wanted to highlight in this deck tech on red burn for me today was the binder of lightning bolts that has accumulated over time. So some of the first lightning bolts in my collection were not even in English. We have this, it's either Chinese or Japanese. I don't know which, but these were the original loaner lightning bolts that I had to buy off, and they stayed in the deck for a long time because 2009 lightning bolts were not the most acquirable card. They hadn't been printed in a while. They were quite popular and everything. And I did start acquiring them over time. So we're going to highlight a couple of my favorite lightning bolts. This nice lightning bolt here that's actually signed by Christopher Rush. This back. We'll start going through the lightning bolt binder. We're going to look for good lightning bolts to highlight. M10 was one of those times when I decided to get back into Magic, and I felt like collecting a complete playset of cards, so the M10 Lightning Bolt holds a special place to me, as probably a lot of people who were excited to see it return. M10 one back. Around that time, there was the Player Rewards Lightning Bolt, and these you would get if you had been playing in F&Ms and you acquired some amount of points or some amount of even participation so that Wizards was aware of your existence as a player, and they would randomly mail you textless foil cards in the mail, and this was one of the cards that you could get. There were a lot of pretty good cards that they picked for that. That was an amazing program, probably expensive for them, but awesome. And Lightning Bolt was one of them, so I've got a couple of these I was very excited to have. Good lightning bolts. Highlight this lightning bolt. So recently in 2019, I went to I guess it was called a Magic Fest then, and Lightning Bolt was one of the promo cards that you could get at that Magic Fest. It was a modern tournament, and I'm one of those horrible people that brought Hogak to that modern tournament, but I played a lot of Pauper there as well, and got myself a whole lot of Lightning Bolts, and I loved collecting them. Lightning Bolt back. Okay, good one down in this corner. Look at this. Sometimes I use this lightning bolt because the text is super large on it, just to do damage to my coworker. All lightning bolts go at his face when we play, and we don't put lightning bolts in our decks super often because we're playing Commander, but when I do, I like to use this one just because I feel like it does 3 damage bigger. Put that one away. We got another Christopher Rush lightning bolt. We were specifically looking for a lightning bolt in here. Where is it? Ooh, there we go. Okay. Found it. So this lightning bolt, I got it on my trip to Spain, and the day I bought it, I checked the time, and it was right about lunchtime back in the US, so I figured my friends would sat down to play the Commander, so I lightning bolted my friend over a text message, and then took a picture of my new lightning bolt that I had acquired. I'm quite happy to have this Spanish souvenir that I can continue to enjoy throughout my career of Magic. Okay, one more lightning bolt. Okay, we've got this page over here. I'm going to pull all these out, show them to the camera, but they did also do a Lightning Bolt Secret Lair, and I got a couple of those. I got lucky because I forgot when the date was and just happened to luckily hit it, or else I would have had to buy some Lightning Bolts secondhand, but I figured since I had started this wonderful binder of Lightning Bolts, I should probably include some Secret Lair Lightning Bolts. I think they only came in foil, or else I probably would have also bought some non-foils, and these are all foils, so they're all starting to curl, and hopefully they'll be okay in the binder. But such is the nature of Secret Lair, and we all have to make our own decisions. Do we want to buy it or not? I don't know if these will ever get played anyways, but I'm hoping they don't warp my binder too much. My wonderful lightning bolts. Yep. Okay, that's as far as I've gotten on collecting lightning bolts. I'll probably continue to do that throughout the rest of my collecting magic. And I was happy to share this with everybody today at the end of the deck tech.